See, I wanted to get a half an hour out of you, so you got to stand up. Because I'm done unless you guys have a little bit of your butts not so numb. My name is Dan Bruner. I work for the Department of Agriculture in environmental never mind. Anyhow, I'm an inspector. And Glenn wanted to know if I could come and talk about what happens at an inspection. Well, you're going to get the short version because most of the inspections have an answer sheet or a piece of paper that has 9 or 10 or 12 pages. So you're going to get a small, very short overview on what we as inspectors do at the permitted farms. Now, there we go. When we get started, we're looking for information. Now, the information will provide you with the ability to say that I am following my permit. That is what my job is, to make sure that you are following your permit. Because if you're not following your permit, guess what happens? I now become a regulator. And if you don't follow your permit, which I find very interesting because you signed it, do you not know what you signed? So this is really fairly easy. In fact, my job is for you to stay in compliance with your permit. That's all I'm there for. I'm there to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. You will get a phone call, or they will get a phone call if you're not permitted. Well, anyway, we don't come unannounced. So there is no reason for not having the paperwork done. Usually you have about 2 weeks' notice, maybe 3 weeks' notice, maybe a month, but I doubt it. We just don't show up. And if I show up at your doorstep, you better be worried. If I haven't had time to call you, I have gotten a complaint about you, and I'm showing up. So, our inspections fall into 3 broad categories. A routine inspection means that we're coming once, twice, or 3 times a year to look at your records, to look at the facility. A partial inspection means that there's something that I need to come back out on that you did not do right the first time. So I'm going to come back out. But that also generates paperwork. And then initial inspections. Those are the ones that I think are the most crucial from my job. How well I do that initial inspection makes all of the routine ones better or worse, depending on how good a job I've done. I'm gathering information. A lot of information is gathered long before I get to your place, or long before I get there. I know the name, the permit number, I know the facility, I got the location, I've got the latitude and longitude. It's all in the permit. All of these things I've gathered out of the permit before I ever show up. I know what kind of water system you have. I know what kind of manure storage you have. I know how big it is. I know how many animals you have. I know how you're supposed to manage your manure. I know how many acres you're going to put it on. I know when your last soil test was. It's all in the permit. Permits are good for 5 years. Then you have to get them renewed. Information that I'm going to be looking for that you're going to generate for me, or the facility is generating for me. Insect and rodent inspections. Mortality, operating records, visual inspections, and then at the end, my findings. Permit. The permit, this is the information on permit. One of the things that I found interesting when I started doing this, and I've only been doing this for 3 years, I'm going on my 4th year, but what I didn't understand is permit renewal. They wanted that renewal 180 days before your permit expires. I had a hard time getting that into my head. So I went to writing it on the inspection form, so it's not for the facility, it's for so I can remember too. Because that is crucial. Because if it isn't there 180 days before it expires, you're out of compliance. And when you're out of compliance, it generates...
More paperwork?
No. A fine. Or paperwork for me, yes. It does. See, this whole thing really doesn't have anything to do with you. You're generating paperwork to supply me so I can generate my paperwork. Is that okay? Does that work? It's going to have to. Anyway, now, there's a couple different types of permits. There's a PTO, which is a permit to operate, and another is a permit to install. New facilities or new operations are going to have a permit to install along with the PTO. And you may have a permit to install later. They're two separate permits. The permit to operate is good for 5 years. The permit to install is good for 2 years. And then after that, it has to be renewed annually. A permit to install is the permit to build something. Add livestock, build a new building, build a manure pond, something. It's almost like it's a physical thing. And then there's also permit modifications, which is less than 10% of a change. If I had 2,000 cows and I could change my facility without generating a new PTI, and I have to stay less than 10%, I have to add less than 200 cows. Yes, sir?
Can the permit to install be extended because you have drop in price of milk, or you got to start over?
Permit to install?
Yes.
Permit to install can be extended every year until you get it finished.
Okay.
But you have to request it before you see the effective date. So the effective date is 1/22/15. So now it's past due if you haven't asked for an extension. I put that up there for that reason, to help me understand and remember. Now, permit modifications are something that's less than 10% of the volume of manure or the amount of livestock. Just kind of a broad generalization. And a major operational change is when you are changing how you're doing things. And that could generate a new PTI or a new PTO, depending on what you're doing. Biosecurity at the facility. In the beginning, before we started at the initial inspection, I'm asking you what your biosecurity measures are at that facility. When can I come? What do I need to do before I come? Make sense? Then livestock type and number, that changes. You have in your permit, that's why I said in the beginning, I know a lot about you before I ever get there. You have a permitted number of livestock. If you go over that, it generates red flags, bells, and whistles. You can go over 10%, but don't do that. That gets everybody's attention because you're only permitted for this facility for X number, whether it's 2,000 cows, 4,000 head of hogs, stay that. And the number of employees. We keep track of that. Water systems. Every facility is required to have annually a well water test. They test for coliform, total coliform, and nitrates. Annually. Groundwater samples are required for certain facilities. Some, depending on what kind of ponds were put in, depending on what has happened in the past, there may be monitoring wells out there that are anywhere from once to twice a year. I'm reviewing their reports. Sanitary permits. Do we have bathrooms? Where does it go? Is there a permit for it to go there? And the other waste. What do you do with your waste? How do you take care of that? All of that's recorded. Manure storage. Type. Sample results. Kevin mentioned, how often do you have to sample a manure storage that's used for application? Annually? Very good. You guys were paying attention. Great. Capacities. I know the capacities. This is where I start looking at the records. Inspections. Have you looked at them on a weekly basis and wrote down what you found, the levels, rodents, anything else that has come about that might happen, that might have caused problems, that what has changed? So those are, I'm looking at your inspection records. That's the first one of the first records is what is the capacity, how full is it, and have you done your inspections on manure storage? Manure management. Where's it going, when's it going, and how much are you going? How are you going to get it out of there? Where's it going? What fields are it going to? And then the third one, frozen ground. What's the answer to that one? No. Distribution and utilization. Probably one of the hardest concepts that I've had to try and wrap my head around in this job. Distribution and utilization. I don't know if I can still even explain it, but it's where the manure is transferred, the chain of custody changes from the facility to another second party. Does that make sense? So there are records that go along with that. Eric I think Eric, you had one of them up there. Soil characteristics, water holding capacity. Are we watching that? Cropping schedule, and then finally application. This is, you've seen this one not that long ago. I just put these in here to highlight some of the crucial areas that need to be reported. All this information is here is information that I need to fill out my reports. I'm looking at all land applications. I'm looking at all the distribution and utilization agreements. And I'm looking to see if your soil tests are current. How old can your soil tests be? 3 years. Water holding capacity. That is the important number right there. That's what I'm looking for. Did you over-apply? Because on permitted facilities, that's it. There are no, as far as I know, no special exemptions. I'm looking for what was the water holding capacity when you went out there. And I'm really looking at that if there's a complaint or a spill or anything like that. That's one of the first things I'm looking at is what was the water holding capacity when you got there. Setbacks. They don't have to be fancy. Your records don't have to be fancy. They can be pretty hand-drawn is fine. Then these are real easy for me. I know where you've been. As someone said this morning, you can't hide. You can't hide manure applications. Weather forecasts. These are all in the records. I am looking for these. I'm looking at these. Now, I'll be really honest. If there's a dairy farm that's moving 50 million gallons of manure in a year, I'm not looking at every field. I'm looking for patterns. If you're doing it for 1, 2, or 5%, you're doing for them all. And if you're moving that much manure, you've come up with a system that allows you to do this in a timely manner. Because how many fields, think about how many 100-acre fields it takes to move 50 million gallons of manure, and you can only put on 13,000 gallons with each application. That's a lot of acres, isn't it? A lot of fields. A lot of record keeping. Why do I keep records? Why do they keep records? It's for the benefit of the facility because it adds protection in case there's been a complaint or a spill, as Kevin talked about. Now, should I be out there today? If that's the weather forecast when I got up this morning, should I be out there? If you don't take anything home except for what I'm about to tell you today, it's worth my time. Okay, now, where do I start? Where do I start my 50%? Because what is it? It's 50%, greater than 50%, greater than a half an inch, right? Where do I start? Where does it start? Okay, 3 o'clock, right there. Now, how do I know if I'm going to have a half an inch or more? Start adding them up. Do I stop here, where it goes down below 50%? No. I add them all up, as far out as it goes. You do not stop. It is. But it's still, if I'm adding up for the total amount of rainfall, now this one happens to be a good example because it goes over a half an inch real quick. What happens if there's one where it doesn't go over a half an inch real quick? You always have to remember that the trigger point is 50%, and until there's a break in the rainfall prediction, they're all added up. This is a form that we require. I call it chain of custody. Chain of custody. Who is taking responsibility for that manure? And since my primary part of my job is to protect the facility that I'm working with, I'm making sure that this is done. Because if there is a complaint or a spill, what happens? Well, this has been signed, so now it's your responsibility. Because you signed it, that manure has transferred to you. Does that negate the responsibility of the facility in certain cases? No. See anything wrong with this? This is an accident. Now, those of you who have pumped manure before, Jerry, what happens when you push the line the first time and turn the pump on? What happens? What happens to the hose? It's going to jump. Okay. This hose jumped. It was about that far from the edge of the ditch. All right? It jumped into the ditch. It went boop down into the ditch, rolled into the ditch. This was a spill. They lost about maybe 100 gallons because they were right there and turned the pump off. This is what happened. Can you see what happened? Where did that hose fall onto? Onto a culvert that had been hit by a mower. Had a point sticking up. Record keeping is great. I put this in here to say that if there's a spill, they have 5 days to send in a written report. They got 24 hours to call me. Or less. Preferably sooner than that. I'll even get out of the tractor and come. I've been called in the middle of the night to go out, and my job is to help. That's it. But luckily, this could have been so much worse had they not been inspecting the hoses and been watching. They knew that the hoses jump when you hit them hard the first time. See anything wrong with this? There's multiple things wrong with this. Can we name them? Well, that's a manure stockpile, of course. First of all, it's not far enough away from the waters of Ohio. Second, it's on what? Well, that's okay in itself. Where does the water go? Towards the waters of Ohio. Downhill. Water runs which way? Uphill, right? Well, there are times when people think it does, but anyway. So, guess what? It's kind of hard to move the manure pile when the ground's thawed now and you can't get in there. Creates what? Penalties. It was downhill. Okay. Let's just say that downhill doesn't make any difference if you're far enough away, but what did make a difference is he was not far enough away from the waters of the state. So downhill in itself is not a problem if it doesn't go into the waters of the state. If it goes into the waters of the state and you're still far enough, you're still out of luck. So think about that before you put it out there. If worst case scenario, where's it going to go? I can't tell you how many times I've come home shaking my head going, really? Are you kidding me? Did you not think before you did that? This map is in here. This is the kind of map I want to see when you go put stockpiles out. Where are you going to put it? There's how many loads. This is where you're going to enter. It's back there. I know. I can even measure the setbacks off the map. That's not hard. That's what they got the little line calculator in there for, right? Okay, rodents. You wouldn't think rodents would be a problem, would you? But they are. And there is a protocol set forth in each permit on how you're going to maintain, how you are going to manage them, and how you are going to take care of them. And what you're going to do, what threshold, when you're going to put out bait, how often, how far apart are the bait stations. It's all in there. And same with insects. Flies, fly control. What triggers fly control? Who's going to do it? Where are you going to get it? It's all spelled out in the permit. So I'm checking to make sure that you are checking off and looking at the bait stations and doing all that and recording that. That's all part of the recording. Water systems. Why would I want to know if you got water leaks? Why would I want to know that? It's definitely going to add to the storage, isn't it? So are you checking every day, because it's daily, checking for water leaks and fixing them as needed? Mortality. What are the many ways that we can take care of dead livestock? Can you guys name them? Compost is one. Incineration is two. Burial, rendering. Very good. You guys are a very intelligent group. Yeah. How many of you have ever incinerated dead livestock? Raise your hand. Does it smell wonderful? Lovely, doesn't it? My wife, when I first started farrowing sows, the way that they told me to take care of the dead pigs was to incinerate. So I had this nice big incinerator out behind the farrowing house, and I'd fire that thing up. The wind was out of the right direction, and I had 2 burners on it. I'd burn the smoke, and I'd start that up. You know what would happen in about an hour from the time that I would start that? Which way would the wind come? Back and blow it into the house. So guess what Dan finally did? Dan learned how to compost. And life was a lot easier because they say happy wife, happy
life. Is that why that said morality instead of mortality?
Yeah, I probably spelled it wrong, didn't I? Of course I spelled it wrong. This is a fairly, I call this a Cadillac of a compost facility. doesn't have to be that fancy. It's nice, easy to take care of. There, you can't see it because of the snow, but there's a nice approach out front of it for using bobcats and skid steers. And if you're going to ask me, if you're going to compost, this is the way. This is really nice. And the nicer it is, the more often you use it, and the better care you take of it. If it's tough to get the dead livestock to the windrow, and it's quite a ways away, you notice that this is in between two of the hog barns, so they're going to take good care of it, and I know the dead stock's going to be composted. Operating records. Your favorite thing, records. This is the part of the inspection where I go through all the records, all the land applications, look at them, talk to you about them. Do you have a copy of the permit? Are the records all up to date? How long do we have to keep records? 5 years. Very good. It's the same as CLMs. It's 5 years. This is one I struggle with right here. What is a change in the operation? What does a change in the operation mean? What have you changed? Well, you look at the permit, and what have you done in the past 6 months since I was here that's different from what you were doing before? Didn't say it was right or wrong, didn't say it was, what have you changed? Well, you may have added a couple farms to your manure management plan. You may have lost a couple. You may have been building a barn. May have dug a new well. There's just all kinds of things. It's not anything you need to have a permit for or you needed to ask permission for. It's just something you've done that's different from the way you were doing things before. And after we're all done in the office, we get to go on a walkabout. And I get to look for things. What are you laughing about? Because you see all kinds of things out there, let me tell you. I'm looking at the outside of the buildings, I'm looking at the inside of the buildings, I'm looking for discharges, and I'm looking for that woodchuck hole in the pond bank that shouldn't be there, and what are you doing about it? I'm looking for the weeds. How tall are the weeds? They short, long? Have they been mowed? Have you picked up the junk? Because out of sight is out of mind. A clean place has less problems. I'm not sure that in the center, well, right in here, I'm not real excited about this. You know what that is? That's a composting facility. Too many bones. Too many bones. Not that that's... I'm just saying that when people drive by, do you really want to see a femur bone sticking up or a hip bone sticking out of it? That's just not a good common practice. He needs more weeds. Yeah. Okay. Anybody that takes manure from a permitted facility has to be one of two things: a certified livestock manager and a certified fertilizer applicator. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay.
That farmer has to have it.
Yeah. Whoever's taking it has to have it.
Okay.
Whoever signs that piece of paper and that chain of custody will be one of those two things, or that will generate you're out of compliance, which generates more paperwork.
The CLM taking it to another farm, is that other farmer still responsible?
No, if the CLM's name's on that, now if the farmer's name's on it, not the CLM, then that farmer needs to be a CFA.